Hey guys, OG Albino here, bringing you guys our next, I guess, tournament run, Smogon Draft League tournament run. We just recently uploaded our ORAS run about a month ago, a couple weeks ago, and we originally did our kickoff tour, which was a Gen 9 format. But if you guys don't know, Smogon has their official, Draft League circuit that they're doing this year for the first time. I've been playing in all the tournaments, trying to qualify for, the end of the year playoffs. We've played, and like I said, the kickoff tournament, the ORAS tournament, we've made it pretty far in both of them. I think top 64 32 in both. And this time we're going to be playing in the Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, which is personally, nostalgia-wise, my favorite generation, because this is when I first started playing Draft League, was back in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. So I'm really excited for this tournament, and I got a pretty crazy team. If you guys do enjoy this Draft League movie, be sure to drop a like on the video, as well as subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 3,000 subs, and I'd really appreciate it if you help me out along that journey. And, yeah, with that being said, oh, also, there's a little join button down there, and it helps me out a ton if you want to become a channel member. There's some awesome perks down there, whether it becomes, emotes that you get, a cool little badge, custom role in the Discord server, Draft League help, custom videos specifically for you as a member. Go ahead and join if you want to. And with that being said, we can kind of talk about our team a little bit right here. We're rocking out with a pretty crazy squad. Sorry, I was moving that to my other monitor. Now, going into this, I actually had, pick, 4 or 5 out of 8. I was right in the middle, so I did not expect to get the single best Pokemon in Usum in Tapu Koko. If you guys don't know, back when Koko was introduced, terrain was much, much stronger. I believe it was like a 1 point, is it 1.3 to 1.2? It's stronger than what it is now. The boost you get from a terrain boosted attack. So Koko's Thunderbolts are incredibly strong. Not only that, Koko also has access to hidden power this gen, so we can go ahead and rock out with HP Fires for Ferrothorns, HP Ices for the Landorus Therians of the world, and things like that. And on top of that, even more so, it gets the nuke of Z-moves. And this is going to be one of my Z captains. We can go with Tapunium Z, which you're typically not going to do a lot with Koko unless you're playing like a Nidoqueen. But Z Fairy, Dazzling, I just typed in Dazzling Gleam. Z Fairy, Dazzling Gleams, Z Electric Thunderbolts are absolute nukes. Grassium Z, Grass Nuts. There's so many things you can do with this Pokemon that are so unbelievably strong. And I'm really excited to use it this season. Koko originally was my favorite Pokemon in the Draft League format, solely because of how much I used it in Generation 7 and how much fun I had with the Pokemon just being absolutely brain dead and broken. And I got it pick 4, which is incredible. Not something I expected in the slightest. So I'm very excited to use it this season. And then the draft comes back around, and I see another Pokemon, which is debatably top 5 in the format, sitting there in round 2. And of course, I mean, I have to get it. It's fucking Mega Gallade in round 2. Mega Gallade was still there in 8mon, so I had to pick it up. If you guys aren't familiar with Mega Pokemon and how good they are, and which ones are the best, because you just started playing, Draft League or competitive Pokemon in the last 2 generations, Mega Gallade is regarded as one of the best Draft League Pokemon, in general. This thing is incredibly strong, base 165 attack with one of the most spammable dual stabs in the game, and Psychic and Fighting, on top of having Knockoff for coverage. So it already is impossible to switch in, on top of having an incredible speed stat of 110, giving us a really good speed tier. We have that 110 plus Mon and Koko, then we have 110 in Gallade, so we're going to be pretty good there, especially with a round 3 pick, but we'll talk about that in a second. But it's also very bulky. The HP is pretty bad, but 95 defense and 115 speed F is pretty incredible, allowing us to either Swords Dance or bulk up. It does have access to really cool options like Will-O-Wisp, which you're typically not going to run, even Wish, which is really, really funny. But you'll see a lot of Taunt Mega Gallades. You'll see a lot of really, really cool things. You'll even see, Encore, Mega Gallade, potentially, things like that. It gets Shadow Sneak for priority, all of the Elemental Punches, Knockoff, its Dual Stabs. I mean, this Pokemon really just does not have switch-ins. There might be a bulky water, say a Slowbro is on the other side, and that's a great check to Mega Gallade. One of the best checks to Mega Gallade. In fact, now if we have our electric terrain up, though, and we get that E-Terrain plus 2 Thunder Punch off, Slowbro doesn't want to take that very well. So I really do like the combination of Koko Late. Koko is going to U-turn in, force in those things that Gallade wants to come in and bully, and it's going to be able to do so well because Gallade really appreciates those free switch-ins a ton. And yeah, I'm really excited to use Gallade again. It's one of my favorite Megas as well, so... Or this draft is turning out phenomenally already. Phenomenally. Then round 3, in my head, I'm like, alright, I need to start filling out some rolls, maybe my water, maybe my steel type, whatever. Then I look at the draft board, and there is another debatably top 5 Pokemon on the board in Tornadus Therian, our second Z captain. We'll be able to use Z moves with this thing as well. And while we don't have boots anymore, and maybe Torn's not as good as it is in Gen 8 or 9, It's still incredible, man. We have Flyinium Z Hurricanes for just a really strong nuke. Even on more defensive sets, not a lot really wants to switch into that Z Fly Hurricane. It's a reliable one-time Hurricane hit too, so if I'm playing an opposing Mega Glade or Mega Medicham and I need to hit them to kill them or I lose the game, I have that backup option in Z Fly. It doesn't get Nasty Plot in this generation, but it still does everything it does great, and U-turn, knock off, and taunt. And also keep in mind, with no boots in this generation, that means hazards are much better. In Gen 7 and Gen 6, hazards are much more important in having a removal 4. And we have one of the best defoggers in the game. Now we have to worry about hazard itself, but not the big of a deal when we have access to, you know, what do you call it? Defog and Regenerator and things like that. Obviously, just an incredible Pokemon. Offensively, it can still be great. Assault Vest sets are incredible, and you'll see more variants on Torn in this generation opposed to the most recent two, because you can't just slap on boots and, you know, call it a day. So I'm really excited to use Torn here. Speaking of filling out roles, though, and hazards and things like that, I hadn't really started filling out much at this point, obviously, because my team was, you know, so good at the top end, but it was kind of just like broken Pokemon. I'm going to draft them. So I need to grab a Steel type because they were all going in my pool, and I wanted rocks, so I ended up grabbing Bronzong. All reliable. I love this thing. It's a really reliable rocker. Defensive, sturdy pivot that really takes on a lot. It can be a little bit passive in some instances, but the hidden power coverage actually helps it a lot, and really letting it check things like Lander as opposed to being set up fodder for it. Which is just the one that comes to mind because I played it. But obviously it gets Trick Room. It can Toxic in this generation. It can get up Stealth Rock. It can do a ton of different things. And really, it's just a sturdy defensive pivot. Gets up rocks. Gives me a Fairy Resist as well, which I didn't really have up to this point. As well as another Ground Immunity. Take a little bit of pressure off Torn. Good Edgequake Resist too, which my team was very weak to up to this point. So, wanted to have something for that. So, really excited for Bronzong. Now, speaking of, I wanted to have something a little bit more for fairies. I wanted to have something for bulky waters especially, though something that could switch in on the Moose Scald. I don't like switching in my Coco on things. I like to get it in and use it offensively. And I wanted to have Rose right here as a way of kind of doing so, as well as getting up the ever-important spikes for our Mega Gallade, our Coco, and our Torn. If we're just clicking U-turn into Mega Gallade and spikes are up, it's going to be really hard for our opponent to try and deal with that, potentially. And Rose Raid is incredible at that. Not only that, I think this is Rose Raid's, like, best generation, this in Gen 6. It's such an incredible Pokemon because you have that Nat Cure, Scald Switch in spiking option, but you can also be a very offensive spiker with Technician plus Hidden Power. This thing basically gets like a Flamethrower or an Ice Beam in its move pool with the Hidden Power or the like respectively that it decides to go for. So the Technician option is much more viable in this generation than it is in Generation 8 and 9 if you're playing that deck or something like that, which is awesome. We can Leech, we can Sleep Powder if terrain isn't up, so we have to be careful about our own terrain kind of boning us in that instance, but it's going to be great pivoting into grasses, pivoting into fairies, pivoting into waters especially, and it's going to get up spikes for the rest of our team, which is awesome. Now, you'll kind of see that I am kind of like roll compressing and grabbing multiple things in multiple areas, and part of the reason why I felt comfortable grabbing Rose Raid is my grass, even though it doesn't resist ground, is because I had Bronzong Torn. But you're going to see we're going to kind of compromise on a lot of things, and Bronzong's a big reason for that, so I didn't really mention that, but it's a really big reason why we can kind of formulate the team in the way we could. I went Seismitoad next because I didn't have a ground and I didn't have a water, and I like it a little bit more than Swampert this generation. Reason being that Swampert does not have access to Flip Turn this generation, like it does in Gen 8. So I like Seismitoad a little bit more as a rocker. It spreads knockoffs. It's pretty annoying. It has the option of going Swift Swim as well instead of its usual Water Absorb variant. So that's something that we could definitely do if we're playing against Rain, or even I've run Manual Rain Toad like once a season whenever I've drafted it. So that might be the move. It can be physical, special, mixed. It spreads toxics. It gets up rocks. And it's just an overall big nuisance to a lot of teams. I think Assault Vest as well. Now, we do have to be careful of Hidden Powers this generation because Hidden Power does exist. So those Hidden Power grasses from those electrics are going to be annoying, but we have Rose Raid for that, which is obviously nice too. So I really like the combination of the last 3 picks we have as a nice little, not necessarily defensive backbone, but like a glue to our team, allowing us to pivot around and get in our offense. Because this isn't like, you know, a fat balanced build. There's a lot of offense on this build. Now, speaking of fat and balanced, though, we do kind of go in that way the next one because I am really Ghost Weak at this point. Incredibly Ghost Weak, and, you know, the team doesn't really have that way of, like, gluing it together and, like, keeping it healthy and around. So I grabbed Tried and True Audino. Another regen mon here, so nice little regen core to an extent here with Torn. This thing's going to function as a Wish Passer. It's going to pivot into scary, special offensive ghosts and dragons and things like that. It's going to Wish Thunderwave and Encore and get out into our Toad, Bronzong, Torn, all that stuff. Keep them healthy and put us in a good position. Audino is never going to be doing the heavy lifting. It's never going to sit on the field for long because then we get exploited and taken advantage of. But it is going to do its job and checking the things that it needs to check. And yeah, very, very solid Pokemon. Definitely really, really excited for it. And lastly, I realized I didn't have a dark type, and I looked at the points I had left, and I said, damn, bro. I ain't really got nothing left. So, we're gonna grab the ones down here. He looks fun. Is he good necessarily? No, but I have never drafted this Pokemon in my... How many years have I been playing draft? 6 years of playing Draft League at this point. And that's gonna be Alolan Raticate. Big Rat will be our dark type. Now, don't let his stats fool you. He's not that bad. With access to Hustle, this thing can get pretty decently strong with Sucker Punches and Quick Attacks. It also does get access to Swords Dance if we do want to set up. But most of the time, I'm probably just going to be Life Orb. And if I get it on something bulky, like there's not a lot that wants to take like Life Orb Knockoff or like Life Orb Double Edge, Body Slam, or even Return in this generation, which it can learn, which is obviously really, really cool to see. So Return or Double Edge are going to be really viable options. We can even Endeavor. It is a Pursuit Trapper as well. It's just its stats that hold it back. It really does have a pretty awesome move pool and access to really cool things. It gets U-turn too, so more momentum. Big Rat, spoilers, actually comes a couple times this tournament, so I'm excited to see him pop up. I'm excited for you guys to see him do much better than I expected. I guess that'll be the one spoiler, is that Rat comes a few times, and he's pretty dope. So, yeah, that being said, that's our team. Let's jump into our first game of pools. Alrighty, our first game of pools, we're going up against, I want to say Elgino. I'll be honest, I don't know. It's rich coming from a guy who doesn't know, or nobody knows how to pronounce my name. But I mean, no disrespect by it, obviously. We're playing against Elgino, and he has a really, really scary team. Honestly, a team that debatably might be better than ours, like, you know, synergy-wise. It's got a lot of similar qualities. You see, it's also a Tapu Koko draft with a Mega Psychic Fighting type and Mega Medicham. The issue is, he can kind of pivot into Mega Gallade. I cannot pivot into Mega Medicham, so we need to be very careful about how we let that thing position itself. I cannot give Mega Gallade free switch-ins. That's the most important thing with this matchup. Heatran can be very, very scary as well. It is a Z Heatran as well as a Z Koko. We have a Mandibuzz, which can be pretty annoying for our team, but we have plenty of things to potentially beat it down and force chip on it. Kyurem is very scary. We have Bronzong, which is solid check, but Shadow Ball's chunk it, and it's not like we immediately threaten Kyurem. And then Swampert is always annoying, so we're gonna have to be careful about that thing as well. Alrighty, let's go and jump into the team. You see, we're rocking out with a Therium Z, Tapu Koko, Thunderbolt, Calm Mind, Dazzling Gleam, and Roost. Now, realistically, I know that no Grass on is kind of wild, but I like the Roost aspect. I want to be able to stay healthy against things like Mandibuzz, so I can stay out of range of things like Fake Out from Medicham. I want to be able to set up on non-Calm Mind Tapu Kokos pretty well as well. And even like more defensive Heatrans we can set up Calm Minds on. Reason being we're not Grass Knot is because I think he's going to be Rindo Pert anyways, and I think my team can force enough chip on Pert to put him in range of a +1 Z Dazzle, and from there our dual stats just do the rest of the work. So this is going to be our main win con this game. Z Koko can really put in a lot of work if we position it properly. Then we have Mega Gallade here. We're rocking out with Zen Headbutt, Close Combat, Leaf Blade, and Swords Dance. Pretty simple stuff, very straightforward and offensive set in this matchup. It absolutely massacres him. He does not switch in the combination of our dual steps plus Leaf Blade. Leaf Blade is just a guaranteed like nuke the Swampert, because it can naturally take a close combat pretty well. If it's not Rindo, I'll be able to clean through it, and even if it is Rindo, it puts it in range of Koko guaranteed. So I like that aspect as well. I like just the nuke on it. And I realistically didn't need another move slot. I think that close combat Zen Headbutt covers everything else. Then we have our Tornadus Therian here with Hurricane, Sludge Bomb, U-Turn, and Focus Blast. Now, we are a pretty offensive AV variant. We can usually live a hit from Koko. I believe it's like, unless it's like Specs or Z Electric or something like that, which I don't think it's going to be in this game, to be completely honest. The reason we're Sludge Bomb over Sludge Wave, though, where Sludge Wave might have some rolls to kill a little bit easier on the Koko, I like Sludge Bomb as we force in the Mandibuzz, and we can really, you know, chip that thing down and wear it down with poison on it. I don't really have another great way of statusing it other than Seismitoad, and I don't know if it's really likely to come in on Toad anyways. So I wanted a way to, you know, wear it down passively like that, and from there, Hurricanes and Focus Blast are actually pretty free against this team. Focus Blast is great into things like the Kyurem and the Heatran, and Hurricane obviously kind of nukes through everything else not named Tapu Koko, which is great. Next up, we have our Seismitoad. We are Rindo Berry, Earthquake, Stealth Rock, Knockoff, and Toxic. Again, just a big nuisance. It soft checks Coco. We'll be able to check it for a time being, Grass Knot variants and things like that. Knockoff is great for knocking off the items, things like Swampert and Mandibuzz that might want to pivot in on us. Toxic is to wear them down as well. And Stealth Rock is nice to have up because it's Stealth Rock. Earthquake is just our main means of doing damage. I didn't really need a coverage move for Mandibuzz because it's not like I can touch it anyways. I'm going to knock it off first and then Toxic it regardless. And I'm not super worried about like a taunt variant because I can pretty freely go Coco. If anything, I think the Mandas might come in and then U-turn and something else will get Toxic, which is nice. So, yeah, that's going to be our Seismitoad there. Then, next up, we have our Assault Vest Bronzong. Yes, we were running AV Bronzong in our first game already. We are here to check the Kyurem, and that's about it. But it honestly has some pretty good coverage. Otherwise, Flash Cannon and Earthquake, Future Sight, and Grass Knot really hits a lot. It's really only Mandibuzz that hardballs us, but again, Mandy's a mon that kind of hardballs us anyways. I like the Future Sight aspect because like Future Sight plus Coco is like almost a KO basically, and it's a great way of chipping down something like the Swampert, which I really like that aspect of it. Because if I get in my Coco on the Mandibuzz, it either has to like stay in and die, or something else has to come in and take a Dazzle plus a Future Sight. Maybe Heatran can, but it's not going to appreciate it if I click Thunderbolt either. So I think it's more than likely Swampert, and then Swampert's in range of a +1 Dazzle, Z-Dazzle pretty much. So I like that aspect of it. Grass Knot's to hit the Swampert, and Earthquake is to hit the Heatran very well, which we can take a hit from pretty easily as well. Then we have a pretty offensive Technician Roserade where Sludge Bomb spikes Giga Drain and Hidden Power Ground with a Koba Berry. The Koba is not for Mandibuzz. Don't worry, I'm not that stupid. It's for Brave Bird Coco. If Coco wants to click Brave Bird on us, unless it's a Choice Band variant, we should pretty easily leave that hit and be able to Sludge Bomb it and take it out. And I definitely could see like a mixed Coco coming in this game. I still do think that special is a little bit better. Or like some kind of mixed variant. I don't think it'll be full physical, but that's the reason why we have the Koba Berry to live a non like banded hit, because that's obviously nice. Hidden Power Ground is to nuke the Heatran and just put it in the dirt. Sludge Bomb is just good general stab into things like Coco. And then Giga Drain, same thing for the Swampert. We're here to get up spikes though. And again, if we can force a poison on that Mandibuzz with the Sludge Bomb, it's going to have a really tough time consistently defogging throughout the game. Especially considering it doesn't have boots itself. So it's going to have to come in and take rocks and a poison and, click a turn, click and defog. Then my Coco gets in and things like that. So I really think he's super pressured. It's hard for him to defog in this matchup. And I'm hoping to hopefully exploit that. We can go ahead and jump into the battle itself though. You can see the team obviously above again. Let's click the play button. He is going to lead off with his Tapu Koko as I lead off with my Bronzong. Bronzong really covered any lead outside of like a Mandibuzz. And I thought that maybe Swampert would try and lead, get up rocks. I can catch it with a surprise Grass Knot. Something like Medicham I can always take a hit from, potentially. Actually it's not always true. Or something like Heatran, if it feels comfortable getting up rocks in my face, I can always just Earthquake it. Or I can always just super eat any move that it wants to go for. We are going to see a Coco lead, and I don't really want to take, or he isn't really going to want to stand and take a big damage here, so he is just going to click U-turn, as I believe he goes into the Mandibuzz as I throw up a big Future Sight. Again, trying to put a little bit of pressure here. I make a mid-ground of going into Torn here. I get my AV knocked off, which is a bit unfortunate. In this next turn, I'm kind of just going to bait for a Sludge Bomb poison. I don't really have to play around with this thing. I could have gone into my Coco, but I didn't want to get Toxic on it, being that it's really good in this game offensively, and I can, Calm Mind and Roost in front of some things. So getting Toxic really early on wasn't in my best interest, so I played a little bit passively and a little safe, as I don't get the Sludge Bomb poison, but it's not the end of the world. He's going to U-turn one turn early, though, I've noticed, and take a little bit of chip from that Future Sight, which is awesome going into Swampert. Unfortunately, I'm not Grass Knot. I believe he did scout for it, though, as a go for a U-turn. Get out my Tapu Koko, and again, at this point, I'm in a pretty good position. I make a pretty aggressive double here into my Roserade on a Kyurem coming in, and I did not expect this. I figured Dazzling Gleam was pretty free, and that's why Swampert would come out, though I guess he isn't a Rindo Berry variant, so I'm pretty confused at what his, overall plan for Coco was. He wasn't Rindo Pert. He goes into this Kyurem, which kind of screams out that it's either, Roselli, AV, or Scarf. Regardless, I'm going to go into my Bronzong. He makes a good prediction going for Shadow Ball right here. Goes for another Shadow Ball this next turn, and it's going to 2-hit KO me, so I just take the turn to go for a nice and strong Flash Cannon. You'll see I do 51, which is really big, because this means if I get up Stealth Rock, he only has one more switch in after that, which is, again, absolutely incredible for me. I'm going to go into my Gallade, because even if he has Scarf, I naturally eat up any hit that this thing wants to go for. Let's go for a strong close combat, because the Coco can come in, but it's going to take 47 from this close combat. And if Mandibuzz wanted to come in, I would 2-hit KO it potentially with the close combat. So I'd rather catch that thing. Coco, I'm not super worried about it coming in on a close combat because as you saw, it did a ton. U-turn's going to pop. And at this point in the battle, I started kind of realizing like, damn, that's a pretty physically offensive Coco. I didn't know to what extent yet, but it was very, very physically offensive. And I think this calc actually kind of tipped me off that he was going to be a choice band variant. And that's a lot of damage. I'm going to get up my rocks here on the Swampert coming out here as he elects to... Oh, no. Not very smart. As I believe he elects to do the same. Yeah, so I get up my rocks, and he gets up his rocks just the same. Completely fine with me, though. I'm just going to go ahead and throw off a Toxic. I like chipping this thing down. If he wants to stay in and let me Toxic it and wear it down, that's incredible for my Coco endgame, as he really does not have much for it. I knock off his leftovers here so he doesn't get any passive recovery, as I know I'll live another hit, and I've shown to be faster, so I can just throw off one more Earthquake, really chip this thing down, trade down my Toad, but I got up rocks, and... 85% off on this Swampert, and that's more than worth it. I'm going to go into my Gallade. I just click Leaf Blade as to not miss or drop my defenses, because I can still have a Coco hit potentially, depending on what he has and wants to go for. But he brings it out right here, and again, this tips me off that he's physical. I see that Wild Charge ends up killing, as well as Brave Bird, so I decided it's in my best interest to just sack off my Rose Raid right here. At least it's in my best interest right now. And if he wants to go for a Wild Charge, I'll be able to eat it up. If he wants to go for a Brave Bird, yeah, he might kill me, but he's going to take a ton of recoil damage in the process, as Brave Bird does pop. My Copa Berry does not matter, but because of that, he's actually in range of Stealth Rock, which means I can go out into my Coco. Right here, I thought about just, like, roosting, but realistically, if I win a speed tie, I get nothing out of that turn. And if he decides to save it and like try and get a defog off with Mandibuzz later, that's really bad for me. So I am going to click Calm Mind. I could have just attacked, I suppose, as well. But this thing is going to go down right here. I think attacking might have just been my better play. I don't know. It just kind of depends on who wins a tie or anything like that. I guess I don't know his speed or if he's jolly. Like I'm timid, but... Regardless, the Kyurem is going to come out here, and thanks to Bronzong getting off that 49% chip, this thing is on its last switch in. It switches in, takes those rocks, but I know that if this comes in, it's clicking Earth Power in his Scarf. I'm just going to go out into my Torn right here on the Earth Power. It would have been a pretty crazy play to go for an Ice Beam there. He's going to go out into his Mandibuzz. As I click U-turn, I really do not want to let this thing defog, and I really do not want to, I really want to get off a Roost with my Coco right here, because again, look at Coco and look at the rest of this team right now. It goes absolutely crazy. He's going to go ahead and get a little bit of lefties back. I just roost up here as he goes for a nice and smart and aggressive U-turn. Makes sense because if I stayed low, he could have got a Medicham and just like faked me out and killed me, or gone to Scarf Kyurem. He's going to get into Heatran right here, which is a bit scary, but I know that my Gallade can take any one hit from this thing, Magma Storm into the chip or anything like that. He reveals the Z, and in my head I'm like, okay, I should be okay right here, but he shows the Z Sunny Day, and at this point I'm going, oh no. I'm a really offensive Gallade. This might just blow me up. It really might just blow me up. So, I have no other play though. I have to kind of just stay in, hope he either misses a Fire Blast or an Overheat, or I live a Flamethrower, or I live a Fire Blast, something like that. He does throw off the Fire Blast. I live the hit on 8%, and I'm able to close combat and knock out Heatran, which is incredible. That was absolutely terrifying. You have no idea. Medicham is going to come out and is going to show off the fake out and pick me off right here. But again, that's completely fine. I go into my Coco, and right here, I knew that the Kyurem sack was probably going to come out, right? It scouts for Z-move, right? But it scouts for Z-move, and it doesn't really matter beyond that, though, because if he switches out and switches back in, takes one more Rocks turn, he actually dies to Dazzling Gleam. At this point, it's just a roll from regular Dazzling Gleam. So I want to ensure that roll. So I click Z because I don't actually need it for anything else. Mandibuzz is dead. Kyurem is dead to anything I go for. And once this thing switches back in, which it does come back in, I am going to be able to take it out. I go into my Tornadus trying to cover a fake out as he does go for an Ice Punch. Nice aggressive play right there. But because of this, I should be fine. I'm going to go out into my Coco, just click Dazzling Gleam. I suppose he could have sacked the Mandy. I should have lived a fake out from there, so as long as he wasn't fake out into Bullet Punch, which showing his moveset, I don't think he could have fit. I think I was okay. But I'm going to be able to Dazzling Gleam, take out the Medi, and then Thunderbolt and take out the Mandibuzz, and skate by with a very narrow win in our first game here of the video. I don't know if this is actually the first game I played. I just kind of grabbed all the replays. But man, oh man, was this one close. Very good game to Elgino. He has an incredible, crazy team. And yeah, I'm glad we were able to skate by with a W here. So let's go ahead and move on to our second pools game. Alright, next up we're got a game against Akuma Werewolf here. They have pretty cool little rain squad here with things like Zygarde, Bulu, and then Zeraora as well, Megapert, and Mew. So there's actually some really big threats on the other side of this field here. This is actually my opponent's first draft league game ever too, and I didn't know that going into this, and they definitely didn't play like it was their first draft league game ever, so I want to give props beforehand. Like, I think they played really, really well for their first draft league game. This game is a really, really close one and a really scary one for sure, but you can see the team that they have. Let's show you the team that we are rocking out with this week. First up, we have really fun. We are offensive Swift Swim Seismitoad. Yes, we outspeed his own Swampert and everything on his side of the field. With the Rundo Berry, we can always take a hit from Zeraora, or Hydro Pump, Earth Power, Grass Knot, and Sludge Wave. If you look at his team, he does not appreciate my Seismitoad under the rain at all. So I'm really excited for that aspect. I think Toad is going to go absolutely crazy in this game, and I'm hoping it pops off well. Then we have our Mega Gallade. Pretty simple set. We are a Swords Dance variant with Close Combat, Ice Punch, X-Scissor, and Swords Dance. I think the Mew will be Colder Berry if it is a Resist Berry, which is why we're rocking out with an X-Scissor. Outside of that, Close Combat, Ice Punch hits everything very hard. Outside of something like Pelipper, but I don't think Pelipper's a Pokemon he's going to want to leave in on my Mega Gallade in case I am Thunder Punch, or even plus 2 cent Headbutt will just blow it ass backwards. So typically when you have rain, you need to be very careful about your own sweepers and your rain setter, and I think he's going to need to do that, obviously. Then we have a Fizdef, or a Fizdef-ish, Rocky Helmet, Roserade with Poison Point. We are Giga Drains, Toxic Spike, Sludge Bomb, and Spikes. My opponent had no grounded poison on their team, and there's a ton of things that do not appreciate the T-Spikes. If you look at 5 out of 6 of those members with no boots in this generation hate T-Spikes being a thing. So I really want to get those up as soon as possible. I checked the Zeraora very well, especially if rain is up, like the Blaze Kicks that it's going to want to throw off against me are going to absolutely bounce off, and I'm going to be able to Giga Drain and Sludge Bomb. I can take it from Swampert, I believe, as well, even Ice Punch before Hazards, I think. That thing's strong, though, and Roserade isn't known for its physical defense. I'm going to tier to get up T-Spikes, maybe a layer of Spikes as well, if we can, afford to do so. And then if we can pressure the Pelipper into not defogging, which I think our team does well, we'll be in a pretty good spot. Plus, we can always get them up multiple times. And the Helmet Chip is great for things like Swampert, Zera, and even Bulu as well. We check Bulu really, really well as well. Then we have a Fly-Z Torn. We're a pretty simple set. Hurricane, Icy Wind, Taunt, and U-Turn. Really strong in this game. My opponent really doesn't appreciate flying coverage at all. It's just the Zera, and if T-Spike and Spike are up, that thing comes in and takes a Z-Fly. It's at like 40%. Like, it dies pretty quickly. Z-Fly is a great nuke for things like Mew. It's a great nuke on something like a Swampert. Z-Fly even does a ton to Zygarde. It absolutely rocks Bulu too if we don't want to risk missing and dying to a Stone Edge. Icy Wind is to slow down a DDing Zygarde because that is a big threat to my team. Being able to slow that thing down is awesome. And we have Taunt for similar reasons. Zygarde, and especially like a stall breaking like annoying Mew. It's a great way of beating that. Then we have our Coco. Again, pretty interesting set here. We're Thunderbolt, U-Turn, Dazzling Gleam, and Grass Knot with a Choice Scarf. The reason we're Choice Scarf in this game is because it outpaces Rain Pert. It also outplaces a +1 Zygarde very easy, which is going to allow me to potentially revenge it with a Dazzling Gleam, which is absolutely incredible. It's not the best offensively in this game because of the fact that it's choice locked, but I felt like, it was like a necessary evil to, have the Scarf Coco in the back, to, keep things like Swampert and Zygarde at bay because they can get out of hand really fast. And then we have the GOAT here. Raticate Alola with the Black Glasses. We're Double-Edged, Sucker Punch, Knockoff, and Swords Dance. If you look at the Rat, he goes crazy into this team. The Black Glasses Sucker Punches at +2 is going to nuke through the faster things, especially things like Zeraora. With Hazards up, they aren't going to like that. And it's hard to play around Sucker Punch when you have T-Spikes on the field. So I really like that aspect. Double-Edge nukes any Dark Resist. Like, it does a ton to Bulu. It really does a ton to everything on this team. And Knockoff is obviously incredibly valuable, knocking off items and being a nuisance that way. Alright, let's do it. We have the team. Let's go ahead and show it off. I'm going to lead off my Scarf Coco because it really covers everything. Mew is going to lead itself. I'm actually going to pivot onto Torn. I don't want to U-turn and proc a weakness policy as it reveals rocks. And being that it showed rocks, I feel pretty comfortable U-turning again. I'm going to pivot out into Coco on like some kind of potential, I don't know, Thunder Wave, Will-O-Wisp, whatever it wants to be, but it actually shows to be a Life Orb Volt Switch set, which is really interesting. I go into my Coco and I just click U-turn. I don't really have to scout for Scarf because I am also Scarf, so maybe I reveal it there, but I like the chip with U-turn. I have a pretty free switch into Roserade because unless this thing goes for like a Banded Zen Headbutt, it should not be able to kill me with anything. Maybe Life Orb Zen Headbutt as well, to be honest, but I don't think that's the click in this instance. I think Stone Edge is the more likely prediction. I'm expecting my Torn, as we are going to see it does click the Choice Band Stone Edge, doing 72, which is insane. It does a lot, but realistically, Rose Raid's done its job. It got in, and it got up the T-Spike, and that's what we need to do right here. I can save this thing for a sack later on, like, a Zygarde, on, like, a Bulu, on a Zera, Pert, whatever it might be. Life Orb Psychic is going to pop into my Mew, and I realize, oh, man, that's a 2-hit KO. I'm going to U-turn out of here, and I go into my Rat. And Rat either takes the Psychic, obviously being immune, or can eat up a Volt Switch decently well. And then I'm going to reveal it. We're clicking the Sucker Punch, baby. We knock out the Mew from, you know, half or something like that with our Black Glasses Raticate. Out comes Pelipper, and I realized, like, man, I mean, if I can hit my moves on this thing, eliminating the rain is going to be awesome for me. There's no reason for me not to stay in an attack. So I just get off a knockoff. I knock off this thing's Damp Rock. Reason being I knock off into Double Edge as opposed to Double Edge into knockoff is in case he wants to save this. Now he at least does not have a Damp Rock. And that's obviously great for me. No more rain. Which is nice. He's going to Scald. Thankfully, not get the burn. And again, that's just another KO, baby. Big Rat picking up 2 here against the Pelipper, knocking out the Rain and the Mew, which is awesome. Now whatever comes in has to get poisoned. Zygarde is going to be the Sacrificial Lamb. It goes ahead and E-speeds to pick off my Rat. As I'm just going to go out and Gallade this next turn, and there's no reason to not click Ice Punch. We see that this is not a banded Zygarde, or it wouldn't have done 28 with E-speed, and we're going to be able to take it out with an Ice Punch. Again, putting ourselves in an incredible position in this endgame. Swampert's going to come out. I have no reason to not sack off Rose Raid. It just gives me a free switch into whatever I want to go into. Waterfall is going to take me out, but they are going to take the poison plus the Rocky Helmet. I'm going to go into my own Toad, and you'll see, I mean, this thing's in prime position to do a lot of damage. If we had a little bit more rain turns, this honestly might just reverse sweep. I am going to Grass Knot on the Bulu. I don't need to play around him being anything crazy. I'm just going to go ahead and Sludge Wave the turn afterwards, pick off the Bulu. Zera comes out, and if this thing isn't Shuka, I win. Or if it died to Shuka, I won. But he, unfortunately, lived, was probably pretty bulky because I was offensive. But thankfully, we do live one with our Rindo Berry. We're going to die the next turn. But again, not the biggest deal in the world because we have our Scarf Coco. We just go in, we lock Grass Knot and sweep with Scarf, Grass Knot, Tapu Koko, which is cool. Down goes the Zeraora, and then down goes the Swampert, putting us in a nice position, winning 3-0 here against Aqua Werewolf. Again, it was their first draft league game, at least that's what they told me. So, really solid performance and really cool one. The Rain team was really interesting. I like seeing Bulu do well, and the Stone Edge, like, put my Rose Raid almost dead immediately, which is really good for them as well. And I like seeing Mew used in creative ways, like the Life Orb set that was there. It was actually very threatening in this game, especially if it was like a Vacuum Wave variant. I think my Rat would have just died, which would have been fine. I don't think it would have been the biggest deal in the world, but something to keep in mind nonetheless. And yeah, that's going to be our second game of Pools. Let's go on to our third one. Alright, last game of Pools against Azri. Now, we're pretty much clinched for guaranteeing a spot in the bracket, but if we win this game, we're very likely to have a bye in round 1. And the less games you have to play to get to the top, the better, obviously, in making your chances of winning. So we're going to definitely be sweating this one and trying to take a win. You can see a pretty scary team above me. We have a Kyurem Black, which I believe is a Z-move variant. We have a Mega Scizor, Starmie, Gliscor, Neolego, which I think is the second Zmon, as well as a Rabombi. So some pretty scary Webs offense, especially with this type of build. I could see a more offensive Scizor coming. Offensive Swords Dance Mega Scizor is a really scary threat to my team. Same thing with a Z Kyurem Black. Z, like, free shot Kyurem Black just kind of kills something on the squad. Scarf Nihi is a big issue. There's a lot of really scary things in this team we got to be very careful about. So let's go ahead and show off with what we're rocking this time. We are a 4 attacks Coco here with Thunderbolt, Dazzling Gleam, Volt Switch, and Hidden Power Ice. Pretty simple. We're Shuka Berry in order to take a hit from the Gliscor. Other than that, our coverage is pretty darn incredible in this game. T-Bolt, Dazzling Gleam, Volt Switch just hits everything very hard and is very annoying for offense like this to deal with. It doesn't want to switch it on Volt Switches, and it's not like the Gliscor can, because I can just do a kill with the Hidden Power Ice afterwards. So that's obviously great. Then we have a Bulk Up Mega Gallade. This is going to be our main win con this game. If you look at his team, man oh man, does Mega Gallade go crazy. Drain Punch, Knockoff, Ice Punch, Bulk Up, just absolutely dunks on my opponent. They do not appreciate it in the slightest. Their fighting resist are Rabombi and Starmie, which don't appreciate taking Ice Punches or Knockoffs. The same thing with the Gliscor. Other than that, we just kind of Bulk Up and Drain Punch through things. Bulk Up is great too, so we can take hits from the Mega Scizor after we start, you know, boosting a little bit and getting some recovery with Drain Punch. So the main reason we went that over SD. Then I have a Flyinium Z Tornadus for pretty offensive Hurricane, Heat Wave, Defog, and U-Turn. Now, we are walled by Neolego, but I didn't really have the means to fit Hidden Power Ground on this set. Plus, I'm pretty sure it's going to be a Scarf variant in this game anyways. I like the Fly Z as an absolute nuke to so many different things on this team. Heat Wave is to hit Mega Scizor very hard. I believe you can take a +2, like, non-offensive Bullet Punch after rocks. But this is going to be our main defogger anyways. We defog in the face of Rabombi, which means webs shouldn't be going up on our side, which is awesome. Then we have our Audino. We are a Max Spadef set. We are Wish, Encore, Heal Bell, and Knockoff. This is going to be a great pivot into things like the Rabombi, and things like the Nihi, into things like the Starmie, and even like a special Kyurem. Once it pops Z-move, we're able to pretty easily sit on these things in Encore and Wish. Knockoff is obviously really nice in getting rid of items as well, so really solid piece to this team, as well as just keeping everything healthy. Speaking of keeping healthy, we have our Fizdef Seismitope, which is going to bring our main check to the Mega Scizor, Scald, Knockoff, Stealth Rock, and Low Kick. We are Max Fizdef. The only reason we're rocking out with Low Kick is because I'm really scared of a sub Kyurem Black, and this always ensures that I can break its sub, because I can always take a hit from it, no freeze dry this generation, unless it's Hidden Power Grass. I don't appreciate that, but at that point, at least it's not subbing on me. And if it subs and keeps up a sub, it basically gets minimum 2 KOs, and then the next time it comes in, it basically wins. So that's really bad. I don't want a Kyurem to get behind a sub. That's why we're Low Kick. Scald, Knockoff is pretty self-explanatory otherwise. Then we have our Rose Raid. We're actually very offensive this game. We are Sludge Bomb, Hidden Power Fire, Sleep Powder, and Giga Train. My opponent does not appreciate switching into Rose Raid, and I'm hoping to kind of exploit that and click some buttons in this game. But yeah, and hopefully Gallade can win a little bit later on. Alright, let's go ahead and show it off immediately. I am going to lead off with my Koko into Scizor. I figured a U-turn might come out. I figured Bullet Punch was a little bit aggressive, but they do make the play, and they end up being very offensive, you can see. From that Bullet Punch doing 51%. I do get off a big Volt Switch for 42. Again, showing off how offensive that Scizor is. I get into my Torn, and I'm able to kind of put on a little bit of offensive pressure at this point now. Gallade is going to come out here. I'm going to Mega Evolve and throw a very free Knockoff. The Nihilego doesn't threaten me, and if it's Scarf, I knock on a Drain Punch anyways. Starmie is going to come out, take a lot from that Colbur Berry Knockoff, still prove to be somewhat offensive. I'm going to stay in and knock here, because I'm not super worried about getting burned or Thunder Wave, because I have Heal Bell on my Audino, and I should be able to get it off. And removing the Starmie means that I win later on, which is obviously nice. Unfortunately, I do get burned, which means my Knockoff doesn't kill the Starmie. But I'm just going to make the pivot out into Audino here, because I can always Wish into Heal Bell pretty freely here. Psyshock's going to pop, do about 33%. Scald is going to come out next, but I do just Heal Bell, because it gets my Gallade back up. And from here, I can just Wish. It's also not clicking Recover, showing me it's probably not a Recover variant, which is good to know. I'm going to Wish on this Rabombi, go out into my Rose Raid, because I do a lot of damage if I want to click a button here. Get my Wish back up, and something is going to have to come in and take this hit. He goes hard Starmie, which I think that's because, like, if I set up Spike, he dies anyways. He might as well get in his spinner, and this is likely his spinner, being that he's not Recover on it. So I figured that he'd, maybe try and want to get that in. I am just able to Sludge Bomb and knock it out, though. Next up, Kyurem's going to come out. I'm going to go Audino as a pivot, just to kind of see what he wants to go for. If he's Z-Free Shock, that sucks. I'm just going to go for an Encore here on the Ice Beam. It does absolutely nothing to me, and he's going to be locked into Ice Beam, and you'll see Ice Beam just isn't doing much, especially with Leftovers. It's not really even, like, 4-hit KOing me, or 3-hit KOing me, or coming anywhere near it. And he's going to make the pivot into Rabombi right here. I'm going to make the switch into my Rose Raid as I get a Choice Specs over my Expert Belt, which is pretty awesome right here. Sticky Web is going to come out this next turn. I go for a Sleep Powder, expecting like Scizor to come in, or even Nihilego to come in, but they actually like to stay in and get up their webs, which I thought was really interesting considering I own a Tornadus. But they don't end up making that play. They just get up the webs. I missed my Sleep Powder this turn. I make a double out into my Torn here as they do go for a Bug Buzz. And this is fine though, because I'm just going to be able to get off my Defog here. And get off the Defog. Moonblast isn't going to do much to me. Just 47. Now I'm going to make the play back on a Rose Raid, and if they're willing to give this to me, I'm fine with that. I just click Hidden Power Fire, because with Specs Technician and Knock It Out, it also covers the Scizor coming out. Scizor's going to come out this next turn, and while it's pretty obvious that it's going to Bullet Punch me, I don't want to take any chances. I would rather actually get a free switch into my Torn so I can defog away these webs permanently. So I'm just going to sack this off in case he tried to Roost or Bullet Punch or whatever it might be. We are going to go down there. Out comes my Torn, though, and we're just going to click Defog right here, as the Nihi is going to come hard out. But I'm not super worried about this thing. I'm just getting regen back with my Torn. I'm getting it back healthy, no more webs. Audino's going to come out and get poisoned by a Sludge Wave, unfortunately. But again, not the biggest deal in the world, as I am just going to throw off an Encore. I probably should have Heal Belled or Wish there, a little bit less of a passive play. Not the end of the world, though. I'm going to go hard out into my Torn here as a U-turn pops, getting out the Nihilego once again, but like I said, I'm not super worried about that. I'm just going to go back into my Audino, and because of Regenerator, my opponent can make these aggressive doubles, but without hazards up, I'm not really punished, and this is why Regen is so good in draft, is because these pivots and this defensive play that I can make goes unpunished, even when my opponent calls me out and makes the prediction. As right here, this is literally what's happening. I just click Heal Bell this turn as Gliscor is going to come out. I am going to see that it's actually not a Toxic Orb variant. It's going to knock off my leftovers, as I believe I Encore to try and lock it into setup. Because usually when you see a Gliscor without Toxic Orb, it's either like Weakness Policy or Yachi Berry. I guess I could have knocked it off, but I didn't want to let it set up for free. I'd rather just get out into something as it's locked into Rock Polish or Sword Stance and deal with it that way. The next turn I am going to elect to knock off, though, because I don't lose anything doing it. Knocking off this thing's Yachi or Weakness Policy is great, once it's locked into knockoff especially, as I'm going to knock off this incoming Niki's Choice Scarf, which is really, really valuable for me. I'm just going to Wish Up as a Power Gem pops, and then I'm going to go out into my Gallade, and I'm going to start doing some damage right here. I get the Wish Up, I'm able to take that hit very well. Gonna click Bulk Up, but now that this thing isn't Scarf, I don't really worry about it all too much. I'm just gonna click Drain Punch here, get most of my health back, no, all of my health back after that Sludge Wave. Scissor's gonna come out. This is a roll to kill. Unfortunately, I don't get it. Well, it might not have been a roll, but I'm gonna get healthy enough to where I can, come back in later. I'm actually gonna elect to save my Scizor. I don't think he can ever roost here because he sees I'm doing way too much with Drain Punch, and I'm getting all my health back. I'll get a crit eventually, or a high roll, or whatever it might be. I think he's going to try and Bullet Punch and go for a kill. So I'm going to make this, take this opportunity to go into my Seismitoad and Bullet Punch, knock this thing out with my own Rocky Helmet, which is great. Out comes Kyurem. I don't need this Pokemon for anything anymore. It's going to sub. I'm just going to spam Low Kick in order to ensure that it's never behind a sub. From here, it does reveal the Hidden Power Grass. That's completely fine with me, though. I'm going to go out into my Mega Gallade, and this kind of spells the end for my opponent. I am just going to click Drain Punch right here. Knock out the Kyurem. Out comes Gliscor, and this next turn I am going to bulk up. Reason being, I think I actually played this game after I played John and BBR, and I was super tripping about Weakness Policy, and if it was like a bulkier set with Weakness Policy, it could live an Ice Punch, but once I got the +1, it doesn't, and my bulk up makes it to where this thing isn't scary. So I'm just going to Ice Punch the next turn. It is Yachi instead of Weakness Policy. Would have died if it was Weakness Policy, obviously, there, but thankfully we can obviously eat up a hit, and then I'm just going to click Ice Punch again, and that's it. That's the game. Gallade is able to take home a big dub for us, which is awesome. We move on 3-0. We do get a bye in round 1 of our bracket. So we move on, I believe, immediately to top 128, which is going to be next. So let's go ahead and show off that one. Alrighty, guys, top 128. We're here against Zand. We had a bye the round before and top 256 or whatever, so we're on right away. Zand obviously won their game prior, and we're taking them on here. They have a pretty scary squad. We're once again playing Mega Scizor, and as we established in our last pool game, offensive Sword Dance Mega Scizor is a big issue for our team, so I have to be very careful around that. Garchomp is going to be his Zmon. I believe it's Garchomp, either Rotom or Mellow, or it might have been something on the bench, to be completely honest. But that's a big threat to me. Serperior can always get out of hand fast. Now, in particular against my team, I think it struggles a little bit, but if something like Torn gets glared, and it's like HP Fire for a weakened Rose Raid, they can get pretty scary, honestly, depending on, like, how much damage my Torn ends up taking in the process, rocks being up, things like that. So we have to be very careful about that Pokemon. Rotom Heat is a phenomenal Coco check, but it really struggles with a lot of our team, and it's also kind of forced into take on things like Torn, which means it takes a knockoff potentially, and that plus rocks really don't make it a great Coco check anymore, so that's nice to know. And then Meloetta is somewhat annoying. I wasn't actually all too worried about it going into this game. You'll see it ends up being a big, big threat in this matchup. We can go ahead and show off the team that we are rocking with in this game. First up, we have a Lumberry, Tornado Staring. We are Hurricane, Heat Wave, Knockoff, and U-Turn. Pretty bulky set this week. Just take on Scizor a little bit better this time, where Hurricane, Heat Wave, Knockoff, U-Turn hits the team very, very hard. Again, we force knockoffs on things like the Rotom, and then it doesn't really want to stick around anymore. It loses leftovers or a berry. Typically, they run a lot of Iapapa berries or, the equivalent berries in this generation because they're so darn good, especially on the Rotoms. But if we can knock that off, we're going to be in a really good spot. When you turn around and grab momentum, we're Glare we're Lumberry so that we can pivot in on Glare from Serperior and are able to take that on a little bit better and play a little bit less around the Paras and stuff like that, which is nice. Then we have our Mega Gallade, where a bulk up 3 attacks again, Drain Punch, bulk up, Zen Headbutt, and Ice Punch. Again, this Pokemon goes crazy in this game. We just need to chip the Sylveon, and things can go really, really well for us. Drain Punch, Zen Headbutt, Ice Punch hits everything incredibly hard. Just needs to get a little bit of Rocks chip, and we're going to be in a good spot. Speaking of Rock Ship. We also have Spike Ship here in Rosemary. Terrible transition now. We have Giga Drain, Spikes, Hidden Power Fire, and Sludge Bomb. Very natural cure set still though. So I can once again pivot in on that Serp, take that Glare, and kind of function accordingly. It still does pretty good offensively this game, despite us being a very bulky set. Giga Drain, Sludge Bomb, and Hidden Power Fire hit the team pretty hard. Really just Sludge Bomb and Hidden Power Fire against this team in particular. Giga Drain's nice for the Chomp, but realistically it's here to set up Spike, to pivot in on Serp, and maybe catch a Scizor off guard if it tries to pivot in on us, and we can catch it and hit it hard with an HP Fire. Then, Ferrium, Z Coco, Tried and True, what a staple, Thunderbolt, Dazzling Gleam, Calm Mind, and Roost. Pretty simple stuff, man. This Pokemon goes absolutely buck wild. Once we chip down that Rotom, Calm Mind just wins the game. That simple. Z-Dazzle is for like Roselli Chomps, bulkier Chomps, we can kind of nuke them. Same thing with Serperior. I like having the nuke on Serp so that it can't, Leaf Storm me and crit me, or even if I'm low, whatever it might be. We outspeed everything barring Scarfers, so that's obviously incredible for us. And yeah, I'm hoping Coco can pop off this week. We're modest too because of speed tiers, so that's obviously great as well, giving us a little bit of a power boost. We once again have our boy Alolan Raticate. We're Life Orb this time. Double-Edged, Sucker Punch, Crunch, and Facade. We're Facade in case we get caught with a Glare or a Will-O-Wisp or whatever it might be from this team, so we can still throw on strong stab attacks. I almost put Fire Fang on this set. I believe it gets Fire Fang, right? I'm not tripping. Does it get Fire Fang? I don't think it gets Fire Fang. I think that's why it wasn't Fire Fang. Hold up. It does not get Fire Fang. I was crazy. Yeah. So that's why we're Facade. I wanted Fire Fang for the server, but it doesn't get it. I remember that specifically, like being like, Fire Fang for Shiz could be nice. But regardless, as long as we're hitting our moves, Double Edge, Crunch, Sucker Punch, and Facade hits very hard. I like Crunch for the consistent damage on Scizor because it is Mega. Knockoff really isn't doing that much. Crunch does a little bit more, and with Hatcher's up, we actually do a ridiculous amount with Life Orb Crunch. So that's great. And then lastly, we have our Seismitoad. We're our Rindo Berry set with Earthquake, Ice Punch, Stealth Rock, and Scald. Pretty simple stuff. The Rindo Berry is for a Hidden Power Rotom. I like to be able to avoid that and get off a big Scald. And Earthquake Ice Punch is just a very solid rocker this game. Can spread burns with Scald as well. Just a good Pokemon overall here. So, yeah, that's going to be the team. Let's go ahead and jump on into the battle itself. Now, first up, we are going to lead off with our Torn into the Garchomp. I'm fine with that. I believe I just click Hurricane or U-turn turn 1, expecting the Rotom to want to come in on a potential Icy Wind, or even on a potential Z-Fly, because I can usually live anything this thing wants to go for. It also lets me scout and get out of there in case this thing wants to drop a Z-move. It clicks Protect. I'm presuming scouting for my own Z-move, but I don't pop it because I'm not Z-Torn right here. We are going to U-turn here, as I know it's not like a Choice Scarf variant or anything like that. Rocks are going to go up, but I'm going to like to do the same as we see a Z come out. And in my head, I'm like, oh, this is going to be Z Ground. It's going to do a lot of damage to my Toad. But it actually just ends up being Z Dark Crunch. I'm presuming for my Bronzong, which is a good neutral move. Much better than Fire Fang in this game. It's stronger, and the rest of my team doesn't really care about Fire Fang, or they just died to Earthquake anyways. So Z-Dark makes sense for that. I think maybe just clicking EQ and saving the Z-Dark or something like Torn is a nice burst of damage on it if you need it, or even something like Gallade. Might have been a little bit better, but he pops it here. Only does about 40 as I just get up my rocks here pretty freely. Serperior's going to come out, but this is a free Ice Punch if I have ever seen one into the Garchomp. It's a very bulky Serp right here. Switches out with an eject button actually, and gets out in a Rotom, which is cool to use Serp as a pivot in that way, but honestly, this is a perfect position for me, being that they elected to go out into Rotom instead. Nothing on this team really actually deals with Seismitoad super well initially. And I'm Rindo Berry, so I live anything this thing wants to go for, and I can just off a big Scald as the Hidden Power is going to pop, so it ends up coming up pretty clutch. Get off a big Scald, bring this thing down to 21%, which would put it in range of rocks, but there is that Iapapa that I was talking about. Maybe the knockoff would have been a little bit better long-term, because I could have immediately gone on to Gallade and forced a KO on this thing anyways after a knockoff. And after that, it would only have like 1 or 2 more switches to rock depending on rolls and things like that, but not that big of a deal. We at least confirm item, and they're going to click Overheat right here, taking me out, but Seismitoad did its job, did pretty damn good. I'm going to go Eradicate here because it actually does force a KO. I am Facade in case they want to try and stay in and burn me. And based on that damage, they're pretty darn bulky on this thing. I don't think they actually have enough speed for my Rat, so I go into my Rat and I'm not punished by it. I just get off a big double edge, and Rat gets his 3rd kill of the tournament. Big Rat coming up clutch. He's basically dead because of Life Orb and Recoil, but the Scissor's going to come out next. I don't want to let this thing set up for free in case it is a more offensive set, and you see that Life Orb Hustle Crunch does 50% to Mega Scizor, bringing it down to 38. As it does get a defense drop, I get a Life Orb drop, and they're going to U-turn out, which is fine with me. I'm completely fine with that trade. I got so much value out of my rat. The Scizor is basically dead, you know, switching it on rocks as long as I don't let it roost, and nothing on my team does let it roost. It's basically a dead Pokemon other than clicking Bullet Punch. And I took out the Rotom, which is great. So Surf's going to come back out. It's going to take Rock Chip and be pretty darn low. I'm just going to go out into my Torn, and I believe just click Heat Wave and pick this thing off. It was just the more accurate option out of everything. Garchomp is going to come out next, as I believe I just click Hurricane. No reason not to. That is a 2-hit KO from that range, which is awesome. Crunch is the only way that it can hit me too, so no rock coverage. I missed the next Hurricane, which is a bit unfortunate. As an Earthquake pops, I'm presuming that I would pivot into my Koko. But I think it's a bit of an overplay, because Koko is so unbelievably good in this endgame, and I live the next Crunch anyways. So I'm just going to click Hurricane again, knock out the Garchomp, and we're in a pretty good spot. And I'm presuming they didn't have rock coverage, because there's no reason to not click it there and click Crunch instead. So, yeah. Next up, Meloetta is going to come out, and this is, again, perfectly fine for me, because this just gives me a very free knockoff. I can knock off this Meloetta and get rid of its items so that my Koko can clean up soon. As we are going to knock it off, do a ton, I see a Silk Scarf, and then I see a Relic Song, and I go, oh no, that's Last Resort. This has the potential to nuke the entirety of my team. I remember sitting here after this happened and going, oh my god, I just lost to Last Resort Meloetta. And by the way, this is a super cool set. Walled by my Bronzong, but like, Bronzong didn't come, so it was good here. And obviously they have ways of forcing damage on Bronzong, things like the Z-Dark Garchomp in particular. Probably were hoping to force that thing in to get off that Z-Dark on it. So, really cool tech, and I'm looking and I'm frantically like, okay, Roserade dies. Koko dies, and I did not creep this thing. I'm slower than max speed Meloetta. So what I elect to do is I elect to go Mega Gallade here, because looking at it, because I'm such a bulky set, and because I knocked off its Silk Scarf prior, I do live, provided no crit. So we are going to go into our Mega Gallade. Pretty simple stuff. I'm just going to click Drain Punch. We barely live, don't get crit, and knock this thing out with our Drain Punch. And man, oh man, was that terrifying. Out comes Sylveon. I'm completely reserved to just get off Zen Headbutt damage. I should win with my Roserade from here, pretty simply, as they are actually going to throw off a Hyper Voice and show to be Scarf, which is pretty interesting. Not the biggest deal in the world, though. I just go into my Roserade, and I click a pretty free HP Fire here. I figure this is probably going to try and pivot in so that the Scarf Sylveon can win against my Koko, because if they get off a Bullet Punch, Scarf Hyper Voice does have a shot. So I click Hidden Power Fire, but they elect to actually just stay in and click Hyper Voice, which was interesting. I like to just click Sludge Bomb because I should live a Bullet Punch in the Scizor at this range anyways. And I knock out the Sylveon, or come close to knocking out the Sylveon, as it only does 70% because this thing is so naturally bulky. The next turn, I do just click Sludge Bomb again. I probably should have HP fired there, but never punished. It doesn't really matter, though, because the thing died to rocks anyways. Scizor's going to come out, and as long as I spam HP Fire, though, I should be fine. This thing can't really beat me at this point. It's going to stay low. It's not going to be able to roost. It does Bullet Punch. I live, take it out with Thunderbolt, and we move on to top 64 of the tournament. Now, if you know me, you know the bane of my existence has been top 64 in these tournaments. I lost in top 64 in the previous two tours, in the Kickoff Tour and the Oras Tour. However, in top 64, I was supposed to go up against Robert Panda, but he forfeit to me. So we've broken the curse. We made it past top 64. It was actually probably a really tough matchup too, and Robert's a good player. So I was pretty spooked about it, and I didn't have to worry about playing it. So that was awesome. It was also the week that I played Joey in BVR quarterfinals, so it was nice to not have to worry about that. Or was it? No, it wasn't. No shot it was. Regardless, we didn't have to worry about it, which was really cool. And we're gonna go ahead and move on to our top 32 game against Vinny. Alrighty, top 32, here we are. We're going against Vinny, another very solid player. Really scary team, obviously. Honestly, a team I would personally love to use in Usum. We see Landers T, which is going to be a Z Captain, as well as Greninja, which is a Z Captain, Rotom Wash, Comfey, Metagross, and Mega Charizard X. Now, biggest threats to me, any kind of dual dancing Z Flylanders is going to be really scary. I think it's hard to be dual dance in a matchup where you play Torn plus Zong, though. Maybe some kind of like Darkium set, like SD plus Darkium Rock Polish, like, because Darkium can potentially take care of something like Torn very well, and then you can kind of beat down something like Bronzong over the course of the game, or even with your Landers. And other than that, EQ just kind of runs my team. Maybe even just a Rock Polish 3 attack set with, like, you know, Stone Edge, Knockoff, Earthquake, and then either Z Rock or Z, what do you call it? Dark. I could totally see that as well. Mega Charizard X has the win con potential in this game, whether it be Swords Dance or DD. It can absolutely rip through my team, and my team doesn't particularly kill it in one with anything either. I'd be very careful about that. Greninja, if it's like a Life Orb or a Specs variant, can 2-hit KO my whole team depending on the move it wants to click, so I have to be very careful about that as well. Mixed sets are also very scary into my Roserade, because Roserade can check most special Greninjas pretty well. Rotom is going to be a great pivot into my Torn. Comfey is a bit odd to come here in my opinion. I didn't think it would into like Bronzong, Roserade, even things like Torn, and I don't know, I didn't think it would come, but it is here. It at least revenges the Gallade potentially once I get very, very chipped or take a couple close combat drops. Metagross, I'm thinking at matchup this has to be AV. If you look at his team, he's super, super weak to Coco. Landers can soft check, but really it gets put in range of either like an HP Ice, or Z Fairy very quickly. And same thing with Garchomp, oh my god. Same thing with Mega Charizard X. So I really think it's probably an AV Metagross looking at this matchup. And then Megazord X, which is, man, I already said it, but it's scary. We can go over and look at the team that I brought in this game. Here, once again, Z Fairy and Coco. I thought about being like 3 attacks Calm Mind, 3 attacks Roost with HP Ice. But I really felt like I could chip down things like Landorus and Zard into range of Dazzling Gleams pretty easily, especially Zard, which can pretty naturally take on Coco very, very well, just with its insane bulk. But there's lots of helmet pressure, there's lots of hazards pressure on the team that I ended up building, so I figured I could put it in range pretty darn quick. And same thing with Landers, I feel like I can chip it down pretty considerably with rocks, and with, you know, helmet chip from a couple of my Pokemon. So that's why we're Z Fairy set. I wanted the Roost so I could beat like non-Calm Mind Comphase and beat down Rotom that's not toxicking me, and you know, things like that. Even like Roost up on like a, you know, Bren switch or whatever it might be. So excited for Coco here. We also have a Rocky Helmet Torn. We're pretty fast, but like obviously mostly in our Fizz Def, mostly invested in our Fizz Def. We're only timid because it gives me more investment or more EV allocation for my Fizz Def. We're Hurricane Knockoff U-Turn Taunt. Tried and true Torn. We are not deviating from the tried and true classic. Knockoffs are super free this game, getting rid of Rotom lefties or Helmet, getting rid of Comfey Helmet or lefties, getting rid of an AV on Metagross is incredible. And even getting rid of like a Life Orb on Gren, or like leftovers or something like that on Landorus if it's not a Z variant, but I am expecting Z Landorus personally. Taunt prevents any kind of setup or rock setup or anything like that against me. It's just an overall very reliable Pokemon, and if I need to use the pivot in on Landorus, clicking U-turn, I can get some really much needed chip throughout the process of doing that. Or even if it's just Zard clicking Flare Blitz and doing 70% to me, it does do 70% to me, but then it has to take Blitz, Recoil, plus Helmet, and then if hazards are up, that's basically a dead Zard for my Coco. So that's kind of the main thought process of the Helmet Torn this week. And we have our Black Sludging Roserade. Pretty darn Spadef this week. We are Giga Drain, Sludge Bomb, Leech Seed, and Spikes. I like Spikes a lot. I like spreading leeches on the things that can take me on naturally. Things like Zard, things like the Metagross. We can kind of get up a leech on them and be annoying. Same thing with like a Spadef Landorus. And then Giga Drain, Sludge Bomb is solid overall. This checks Gren and Comfey very well. And then we can, you know, spike up accordingly. It also obviously walls Rotom very well too. Then we have our Gallade. We are just 4 attacks this week. We're Close Combat, Knockoff, Ice Punch, and Poison Jab. We're pretty darn bulky in this game. And I kind of tossed and turned a little bit on how I wanted to be, like, set-wise, just so I could naturally take hits from things like Greninja, and even Comfey very well. I believe I'm not too KO'd by Gren unless it's, like, Specs Pump or something like that. And even then, I might even take 2 Specs Pumps because Gallade is so darn bulky and it's Spadef. But we're pretty darn bulky this game, but we're also just kind of here to click buttons. CC, Knock, Ice Punch, and Poison Jab does so much damage to all of the Pokemon. Poison Jab is simply there for Comfey, and then Close Combat, Knockoff, Ice Punch, hit everything else very, very hard. I don't really see myself an opportunity of getting to set up and win against this team, so that's why we're just 4 attacks. Then I have a Fizz Def Helmet Toad, Earth Power, Knockoff, Toxic, and Scald. Here to, again, knock off items, get rid of Rotom lefties, get off a big Toxic onto something, Toxicking something like the Gren switching in, the Rotom switching in, or even an aggressive Comfey switching in is really nice. This is going to be our main switch into Zard. We have Earth Power to always break that thing sub, and then Scald is just to bait burns on things after we kind of knock off some items like that. So no rocks right here, but we do have it on our Bronzong, which is going to be Cold Barrier next set. Earthquake, Hidden Power Ice, Stealth Rock, and Gyro Ball. This is going to be our main Landers pivot. The Cold Barrier is for it, not the Greninja, obviously, because that thing I don't really hit very hardly. Now, Earthquakes aren't going to tickle, but, you know, I don't hit it super hard. We're Gyro Ball in order to hit things like the Comfey, because that thing can be very, very obnoxious. I want to make sure that I'm not super weak to Calm Mind. I know I have my Roserade, but the more the merrier, especially because I plan on using my Roserade in other places. This thing also checks Metagross. And it checks the Landers plus the Comfey very, very well. Gets up rocks for me, puts me in a good position in that regard. All right, that being said, let's go ahead and jump on into it. I am going to lead off with my Roserade into this Landers. I really wanted to get up an early spike. I feel like he struggles big time defogging against me, and getting up a spike would have been great. In hindsight, maybe leading with my Bronzong and getting up rocks would have been a little bit more beneficial, but I figured that a Rotom lead might come out because of the potential of a Bronzong lead or a Torn lead or something of the sorts. But we do see a Landers lead, which is a bit unfortunate. I don't want to take a Z-Fly, obviously. I put it out into my Torn to see what it wants to go for. We're going to see a U-turn. No other item, so it can be Scarf, but again, we can't call that right now. We have no idea. Rotom is going to come out on me. I know I live a hit if it's Scarf, so I'm just going to U-turn and gain a little bit of switch initiative. As a light screen is going to go up, which is definitely interesting. I go ahead and get up a spike on the Rotom switching out. As I get up my spike, Zard is going to come in, and this is pretty darn scary when you consider that my Toad is special. We are just going to see a Flare Blitz immediately, and despite me being Stiff Toad, that still does 30%, but we get it down to about 73, which is obviously going to be great. I throw off a Toxic, not expecting it to be sub. It is a Lum Rotom, so it can pivot in on this. And just in case it's like some weird sub variant, I do pivot out here. I could have Toxic'd again, but if it is going to be a defog variant too, I want to get back in my Roserade and get up that spike immediately, once again. So I believe that is what I'm just going to do right here. Either I spike or I leech. One of the two. I do just spike up in the Zard's face. Again, this is fine. I'm going to go back out into my Toad. I'm going to try and spread some status, spread some chip on the Zard. You see, we do live that Dragon Claw into another one, potentially depending on rolls. I'm just going to throw off a Toxic. I don't think he's going to want to risk it anyways. I'll go back out into my Rotom, or my Roserade. Volt Switch does come out this time. Landorus is going to be the pivot of choice in this instance. And I believe I am going to go out into my Bronzong just to try and get up some Stealth Rock, as he does elect to get up his own. So if he wants to defog again, he's going to have to defog away his own rocks, which is annoying for my Torn. So I do get out my rocks here. Zard's going to come out. I think I pivot Torn here because I know that my Toad kind of just gets 2-hit KO'd or OHKO'd by a Dragon Claw after rocks. I do click Taunt here to stop the Zard from Dragon Dancing. I am going to U-turn out, go out into my own Seismitoad here, as a Dragon Claw is going to pop. Now, if that was Flare Blitz, that's even better because it would be a little bit lower than 72, and looking, depending on how bulky his Zard is, this is a roll on no bulk, but if he would have attacked me with Flare Blitz, he would have taken that chip plus the recoil, and he would have been in range. Also, if I was a little bit more offensive, I might have been in a better spot, so I am going to click Close Combat, not come close to knocking this thing out. So it was a very bulky Zard, and I'm going to trade my Gallade for the Zard, which is honestly not great for your boy, because Gallade was really good in this game, but I just didn't have anything on my team that had the OHKO potential on it, and I still wanted my Torn for things like the Landorus or even things like the Greninja and actually taking a hit from it. Like, I don't know, it was really tough. Maybe I should have kept my Gallade around. I honestly, I don't know. I could be tripping. Out comes the Landorus next on my Torn though. I believe I just click Hurricane, do a little bit of damage. We actually get pretty lucky, get a Confusion, and Vinny hits himself in Confusion, which means that this Landorus is now in range of a second Hurricane, so that was a huge lucky turn on my end. He is going to go ahead and dodge a Hurricane this next turn, but like I said, I can't really complain because I got the Confusion. Honestly, better for me. He's going to hit his Stone Edge through the Confusion. I hit my Hurricane the next turn and knock it out. So Landorus, big threat gone. Out comes Rotom. Again, I'm completely fine with U-turning. I'm just going to go out into my Roserade. If he wants to Volt Switch out, that's fine. But I do get to keep my hazards if that's the case. Now, this next turn, I believe I am going to elect to Lead Seed, expecting him to want to hard switch out into something like a Metagross. But instead, a Volt Switch comes out and Gren comes out. And in my head, I'm like, okay, maybe he's just trying to get some chip damage in order to win, you know, a little bit later with, you know, or so that things like Rotom can do a little bit better, or something like a Calm Mind Comfey can do better. Regardless, I didn't feel super comfortable switching out on this thing, and I knew I lived a Specs Ice Beam from here pretty comfortably, so I believe I just went for a Giga Drain. Unfortunately, he reveals a Supersonic Sky Strike on what I believe is probably a bounce, and I am going to go down that turn. I am going to go into my Koko this next turn, though, I believe, and just click Calm Mind, or do I click Thunderbolt this turn? I just click Thunderbolt because the, you know, screen is up. This next turn, I do elect to just Calm Mind as the Comfey gets an unfortunate crit, but it's only doing 34, and now that I Calm Minded up, this thing does not want to take an E-Terrain boosted hit. He is going to U-turn, though, and go out into Metagross. And this is a big turn, right? Because I told you guys before, what I think this Metagross is, because I look at his team, and personally, he feels very Koko weak to me. He could have been Yashi Landorus. We didn't really ever see an item, and obviously wasn't Z. He could have been Yachi. He could have been just very Spadef. But in my head, I thought he was pretty darn weak to our Coco. I felt like Landers was easy to chip down. I felt like Zarb was easy to chip down. So having a third like soft checked in Metagross being Assault Vest made a lot of sense to me. And if I did not kill this Metagross in one with this Thunderbolt, which I didn't, if it was Assault Vest, I instantly lost the game. Like, there was no coming back. I lost the game. Torn cannot win from here. And Bronzong definitely can't. This Coco is my win con. So in my head, I'm thinking, okay, what I need to do is I need to get out into my Torn, sack it off, get some Rocky Helmet Chip, go Zong, and then try and move with Thunderbolt Coco in just a little bit. Because it really does just win. It beats Rotom, it beats Greninja, it beats the Comfey, especially with these hazards up. So in my head, I'm like, okay, that's all I need to do. If I was Z Electric, the game was also over, but I also think that Z Fairy was just much better. So I am going to elect to switch out on the assumption that I think he is Assault Vest. If he is not Assault Vest, I did have a pretty good chance to kill here, and I probably would have gone for it. I am going to go into my Bronzong, as we do see a Meteor Mash and an attack boost. And again, still at this point, I'm thinking I'm mostly okay. I pivot out into my Torn here. I probably should have just gone Torn immediately to get the chip, and then gone back out into Coco to try and kill, but even then, if it was AV, I didn't, as we see an Agility on my Bronzong. And at this point, I know it's over. Unfortunately, as long as he hits this, like, Meteor Mash, or even if he doesn't, I don't have a way of OHKOing him, and, my Bronzong can't really touch him, and this screams weakness policy, and, it was just a good bluff. I mean, if this was his set, this was his play to make, and I made the wrong call. He gets an attack boost, but really it doesn't matter. The attack boost doesn't matter at all. I made the wrong play, and I end up losing to it. I was Colbra, obviously. I eat up this Pursuit like it's nothing, but I don't have a way of hitting this other than click an Earthquake and popping this weakness policy. It doesn't even 2-hit KO from there. It's a very bulky Metagross. As we go down to this next Pursuit, unless it's, you know, misses this Meteor Mash, the game is over. He is going to mash, and I'm going to go down, unfortunately. So, we lose, unfortunately. 4-0, but I think it's much closer than the score indicated. Coco quite literally won if I, like, clicked Thunderbolt and got the roll, or, like, if he missed the Meteor Mash, or, like, if I killed this Metagross, the game was over. So I think this was a very close game. I'm not too upset with myself, because I think, like, making this, not that, like, this weakness policy set was bad, it obviously worked. It's just, in my head, when I looked at his team, the deduction that I made was that he had to be AV in my mind, or at least very Spadef, and if I lost my Coco that turn, the game was also over anyways, so I thought I made my best play, I guess. I just ended up calling wrong, and that happens sometimes, but we made top 32, so it's better than last time. We're currently in the Sword and Shield Tour right now. I believe I'm set to play my top 60 something game. Top 60, is it top 64 or is it top 128 game this week? Spoilers. So that'll be a movie that'll be coming out to you guys. I guess it's a little treat for making it to the end of the video. But yeah, I had a lot of fun with this team. This team was insane. I wish I would have gotten a team like this for a full season because it was absolutely nuts to build with, and we played really well with it, in my opinion. Obviously, losing one game in a tournament means you're done, but I mean, you have a full season with a team like this, who knows you still do. But I love the tournament content, or the tournaments. I think they're a lot of fun, and you guys are seeming to enjoy them. If you did enjoy, be sure to drop a like on the video, sub to the channel, become a member, all the YouTuber plug stuff. And yeah, that being said, I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.